Present day. Present time.
All right, so let's talk about something. So, as you know, that Steam machine was actually announced that it was going to cost like a PC, and this is confusing a lot of people. I know a lot of people have a lot of confusions about why is the price. Let me just put this away. Why is the price is going to be so expensive, like a real PC, when it's so expensive like a real PC, when in the past Gavin has said that this is not meant to replace your gaming PC. Now, I saw clownfish and many videos, people that been talking about this today, and there seems to be a lot of confusion. But I'll explain this a little bit in a way that everyone could digest and other topics and things related to this. Now, let's talk about first what target. Okay, let's target the whole thing. So originally, Gavin said that this wasn't meant to replace your gaming PC. Then they say that the Steam box or the Steam frame, even though I don't think anyone's gonna call it the Steam frame because a lot of people don't know what a mainframe computer is, but that's besides the point. Okay, the whole thing was that it wasn't meant to replace your main gaming computer. And then people got confused because then they announced that the price is going to be closer to actually buying a PC that with the same specs. And people got so confused because yes, it's it, they're saying that, and now the price is closer to a computer. So people were really like thrown off by that. And when they try to ask questions, they basically got told by Valve that because AI, people that are doing AI are actually buying out DDR5 RAM, that it's gonna be more expensive. And I think for the average user or gamer in this case, when you tell them it's like the RAM is too expensive, I don't think that's really explaining the whole picture. So I'm here to actually try to explain this a little bit better and teach you a little bit of what's more under the hood and explain. Because here's the first thing. First thing that people are going to say is like, well, DDR5, right? So if it's DDR5, why don't they just use a DDR4 motherboard and actually save money on RAM since DDR4 RAM is actually way cheaper than DDR5? Yes. Here's why I'm gonna go with this. So yes, the Steam machine or the Steam Cube, whatever, the GabeCube, it does have DDR5, and people are like, "Why don't they go with a cheaper motherboard that has DDR4?" Well, it's not that simple. So, the thing is that DD the G yes, it has a dedicated graphics card. As you could say, it does have a dedicated graphics card, but when they say custom GPU, it usually means that it is an integrated GPU. And when it comes to the Zen, the one they showed, Zen, I think after generation 3 or 2, it doesn't support DDR4 no more, so it needs more compute power from RAM with DDR5 to be able to compute things better, faster. So yeah, if they use DDR4, they basically are going to be hitting a small bottleneck. Now, however, there are other things we got to talk about because I know some people are going to say, well, if we can't because of the Zen GPU, you got to use DDR5, which is being outpriced because stupid companies keep buying them. But then the other solution that someone is going to say is, oh, well, can they just use an NVIDIA integrated GPU since they're actually selling them kinda cheap because NVIDIA wants to break into the integrated GPU market? And I'm like, "Yes and no." Okay, so that's a little bit of complicated question to answer, but I'm going to do my best to actually explain it. So, when it comes to the drivers on NVIDIA, as you know, SteamOS is Linux, and NVIDIA GPUs, they run really lately, the drivers have gotten better under Linux or SteamOS. They've got a lot better than they've been in the past, but they're not a GPU that you can just plug and play. It's not gonna be plug and play, so it's not gonna be good for the casual user. Now, NVIDIA with their 4000 series, they're supporting the Blackwell drivers, and they're officially supporting the Linux drivers for, you know, NVIDIA drivers for Linux. However, there's another issue that comes with this. So even if they're offering better support and they're actually respecting, the thing is there's something wrong with MVK and other things. I discussed this in a video. I'll probably leave that video somewhere so you can go more in depth with what phase. Yes, someone in the Linux community found a solution to actually have DirectX 12 games actually run better. And that's where I'm going with this. DirectX 11 games run really good, but I'm gonna try to explain the short version. DirectX 11 games and before, they run really good on the Linux, on NVIDIA's GPUs, but when it comes to DirectX 12 games, the games tend to underperform, and there's an issue, and the issue is caused because AMD GPUs only need 1 cycle actually to render what's on your screen, which is why a lot of people prefer AMD for Linux. Now, on NVIDIA, it takes sometimes even 5 cycles, 6 cycles, resulting into less frames, less optimized, and less performance. So that's one of the reasons why, yes, you can use an NVIDIA GPU and get rid of the problem with the motherboard where you need a motherboard that actually accepts DDR4 so you could cut the cost, but changing to an NVIDIA GPU are going to introduce all the problems that are not going to be plug and play, and the whole issue is to integrate Linux and actually introduce Linux to people. So no, NVIDIA is not a solution, at least not now. I mean, Fave have figured what's wrong with it, but NVIDIA, this is going to take a long time till these games are actually proper optimized, and it's probably going to take years and years and years till it'll be plug and play. So in other terms, basically what's happening is DDR5, 6,000 cores will be mainstream, in other words, and systems with DDR4 on the AMD side are going to eventually fade out. Yes, new GPUs and APU will expect DDR5 bandwidth or, uh, yeah, and the prices are gonna be pretty expensive for a while. They gone up by a lot. Not only that, you're going to even if they manage to do it and run it in DDR4, you're gonna be losing about 30 to 40% performance. So there's that too. So in other words, Valve is kind of left with a small ultimatum that if they want to actually have good performance, they actually are forced to use DDR5 because if they use DDR4, they'll be cutting themselves off of more than half of performance. So if they want to compete in like the modern gaming sphere, they're going to have to use DDR4 to have something at least slightly up to date and not something that's actually old technology because APUs require more bandwidth. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to tell you then just build PC, do DIY since PCs are so expensive these days. And to be honest, I think they're overpriced these days. No, I'm not going to tell you to build your own PC, even though I've been doing it since 7, but this thing comes like first nature or second nature to me because I'm just used to it. I've been around computers. I have a dad that's an engineer. So I grew up around it. So I understand this part. It's not that simple for certain people. They just don't get computer science. And that's just it, I guess. Okay, another thing that happened with Valve was that they were asked if they were trying to break into the console market, and they basically said no, that's not their intent. And they said that their intent is actually to raise you know, the the operating system market share to Linux. And a lot of people thought that this was really stupid, that this was their goal. But yes and no. Now let me explain. So it could be two things. First thing, well, this is the one that I think is not what's happening. So basically what Valve could be doing is that they're pushing this to increase the market share on Linux to get developers to actually make native games that run on Linux natively. And I don't think I this is could be an assumption to some people, but I don't think this is the case because most developers are gonna actually look at Wine that got forked into Proton, which is a translation layer that is used to use Windows apps and Windows games to translate it into Linux because if you guys don't know, Linux can only read Vulkan and it can only read Vulkan and OpenGL. And the thing with this is that, first of all, they're not going to spend the money to make a whole game. Most of the time, developers are not going to mind when they could just use something that's translated easily and you could just run it on Linux through Proton. Now, what is Proton? What is Wine? So Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator. So it's not an emulator. It basically takes DirectX 9, 8, 10, 12, 11, whatever number you want, and it translates it into Vulkan in order for the computer to actually be able to translate it and run it. That's basically what Proton does. So, where am I going with this? Wait, where was I going? Oh, yeah, that I don't think it's likely that they're trying to get, developers to actually make Linux build games native on Linux. I think it's, something different. So, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. So Valve for a long time has been working with AMD and actually optimized it because this is what they're working on. All their machines run on AMD. And basically what this will do in a way is gonna push developers, since a lot of the Linux users use AMD GPUs, is actually gonna push game developers to actually lean more into Vulkan games. And Vulkan games are actually really good. Vulkan is underrated. A lot of games are made in DirectX 11, 12, but like, let's be DirectX, when it comes to NVIDIA, all that bullshit, all those graphics shit is actually kinda tricky. They probably got it down, but I remember when it first got introduced, it was actually really hard to develop games on it, and it was a pain in the ass, and Vulkan kinda makes that a lot easier. Not only that, it makes games run better under Linux and many operating system. So, because Vulkan is so lightweight, and actually, a lot of the times you even get better performance. So, my theory, personally, I think he's trying to push developers to actually make more Vulkan games because they pretty much benefit everyone in the gaming sphere, I would say, in general, and it will actually help with a lot of problems. So, they're not just, if they are doing this, I don't think it's just for Valve themselves, but for everyone. Everyone gets something out of it. Now, let's answer some other rumors. So, some other rumors that there's around is like, oh, now if it doesn't sell a lot, Valve is gonna start making exclusive games only on SteamOS and the Steam machine. And this is just completely not true, and I'm going to explain. So, backtracking to what I said earlier, the Wine and Proton translation and translating games for Linux can read it. This is actually really, I don't wanna say stupid, but to me it's stupid. For some other people, I can understand you're not stupid, you just don't know about this topic. So basically, this is translating games so Linux can read it, and SteamOS is actually based on Arch, which is this operating system I have right here that I don't fucking know. There, a terminal. So, it's based on Arch, which means that they do make exclusive game only for the Steam box. That, from a marketing perspective, that wouldn't make sense. First of all, I want to explain that so native games, since SteamOS is basically Linux, it'll run in every Linux operating system, and the market share for Linux is really not that big, so it'll be stupid on Valve to do that, so they're not gonna do that, and Valve always has tried to expand their game to bring it to as many platforms as they can because, market, money. So, yes, I do not think that this rumor is true, and it doesn't really make sense. For a person that's not familiar with the Linux community and how Linux works, I guess that will make sense to them, but to me, that doesn't really make sense because if it's native on SteamOS or the Steambox Steam machine, then it'll be native on Linux, and Linux is not really a big market share as compared to Windows. So the other misconception that people say was like about the motherboard. Yeah, they get a huge discount for buying a big amount of motherboards, but that doesn't mean that they can make it cheaper, and here's why. So basically, my dad used to work in all this, and he basically, the way that he explained it to me is that, for example, if a company wants to buy a big chunk amount of motherboards or something, they'll get a really good deal, and they'll get like a huge price cut. But usually that comes with an agreement that, okay, yes, I'm gonna give you this huge price cut, but then you gotta give me this percent of the money that you make to me for me giving you that discount, and they break even or whatever. So that's that. So no, even that. Now the other thing is, well, Linux doesn't cost anything. Yeah, but I don't really think they're actually charging that much. Cause like, yeah, Linux is free, but there is still people developing it. But SteamOS is completely free. Yes, you can install this on any computer, but I will say that AMD builds are the ones who are gonna have a better experience. But when it comes to the desktop, they're not focusing on it. I don't think they're gonna really SteamOS is not gonna be really too focused on the desktop till that Steam box comes out. Yes, they did it for the Steam machine because that was their focus. Now that they're going to the Steam box, I feel like they're gonna focus more into the desktop experience mods. Into the desktop experience more and optimize it for other AMD parts and stuff where it's just plug and play and no issues. because that's basically what the Steambox is, or the GateBox. Now, the other conclusion that people come up with, well, if the NVIDIA is an issue and all this is an issue, why to cut the price? Why don't they install Windows? Well, here's the thing. The whole reason that Valve started developing SteamOS was, by the way, the first SteamOS was horrible. It was based on Debian. The Arch one is more flexible. Anyway, that's not the point. So originally, he gave him what he did want to put Windows on like the first machine that he wanted to make, but the licensing fees for Microsoft were so high that Gavin said, "Fuck you, I'm not fucking paying for that." Not only that, if you see Gavin in his early days, he used to actually work at Microsoft himself. He used to be a developer in Microsoft, and what happened is that after when Windows 8 came into the picture, everything started bloated, and he didn't like the direction where gaming was going and under Windows, and he decided, "Well, fuck you guys, Imma start my own company." So, gaming kinda despises when Windows as an operating system, and to be honest, if you ask me, Windows 7 was developer friendly and super user friendly. Windows 7 was top tier Windows. Now, I don't wanna get too much into that. Windows 8 was a complete mess. Windows 10, it was okay. There were some dark patterns there. It wasn't too bad. Now Windows 11, that fucking that's trash. Anyways, focus. Wait, what I was talking about? Now, as how the Steambox or the Gatebox going to do that, it's hard to tell, but this is why I say what I will say. This is what I think might happen, but don't quote me on this. Might or might not happen. I think that the Steambox is going to sell. It's going to sell like medium. Like it's gonna be like not too much, not too little. It's going to be steady or in the middle for a bit. And then later, once there's like a huge price cut, when the DDR5 becomes more available and cheaper, then yeah, I think that there's actually going to be a price cut. So yes, the Steam Box eventually will be cheaper. That's what I believe is going to happen eventually. Now, if I had to speculate what Valve is trying to do, in my opinion, I think that what Valve is trying to do is actually they're trying to introduce SteamOS and Linux as an operating system for gaming and showing it as viable under AMD and showing people, hey, Linux is not that scary. You could use that. It's not that scary. It's not like that Sorry, I had to burp. It's not that scary. It's actually doable. They're trying to simplify the process, even though I think they should have some tips. For example, maybe making their own package manager or something with a GUI, a UI, what people could actually see. And it doesn't feel something like from the 90s, like PAMAC, which or they could have their own fork of PAMAC. Let me show you what PAMAC is. See, PAMAC is basically that, but some of the package don't really show, like, the picture and stuff, so, yeah, PAMAC is a physical store, and you can just look things up. I don't use it, but for tutorials, I like to use it because it lets you access your package manager while having to touch the terminal. So, in a way, they could also be, like, unifying packages. They could do that too, but I think Flatpak is already doing that, but not all packages are good at Flatpak, and there's some, certain things I'm not gonna get into it. But yeah, that's why I think what Vel is. It's just trying to make Linux not look as scary as something viable, so people feel like they actually have an options and they could break away from Windows. Like they can't be on Windows, but I also have when it comes to rootkit and how kernel level anti-cheat works, this is something that might never happen on Linux unless the developer themselves open up or the market share grows. But even then, the way that Wayland is built, it prevents things from running elevated, like elevated privileges or administrator or whatever. It tends to run on user mode. So unless developers are willing to do that, I don't think kernel level anti-cheat is ever going to run. They can, but it requires some money and investment and time and developers. And the while the market share is so small, that's not going to happen. You could try to push it once the Linux market share actually grows more, but until then, I don't think that's really going to happen yet. At least not yet. Or another thing that they can actually do is actually get Microsoft to actually bring their app onto Linux because that would be really good actually for Game Pass and people that want to take advantage of that. That would be another way that Valve could actually push more people towards Linux or whatever. I mean, you technically can. There's a workaround with cloud gaming through the Edge browser and stuff, but some people just don't want that because you're limited to 60 FPS, and cloud gaming is I see it as a threat to the gaming industry because we already only own a license to our games, and that would just make things worse. But if Microsoft actually brings it to Linux, that will change things and will unify gaming in general, and maybe PSN will do the same. Never know. And we won't have freaking wait, but then that's gonna come with other optimization, getting the game to run. But when it comes to Sony, Sony's going to take its time. So I don't on the Sony side, I'm not too sure about that one, to be honest. But yeah, that's all I have to say for today. So if you guys have any thoughts, you want to tell me your opinions, don't forget to leave that in the comment. If you enjoyed this video, you found this video helpful, you want more content like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, as I always say, Suki, stay weird.
Dim, dam, dadilam, vacarme s'en va dans l'oubli éternam. Et Gustave, dom guardeam, dilim, didididilam, lutes sera dodilom, seram. Dim, dim, da da da, dim, dim, da da da, dim.